Now, though, it's time for our next debate. Who wants to go next?
Well, unfortunately, it's me. So, Nigel Farage of this parish has been speaking in the last day or two about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And he has said that the West provoked Russia into the invasion because of its activities with NATO creeping eastwards. Now, he's been condemned widely. He's been called a disgrace by Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, and Rishi Sunak has also condemned his comments, but he's refusing to apologise. Now, I think that for a man that likes to parrot the lines of Churchill, he sounds a lot more like Neville Chamberlain trying to blame us for defending Ukraine. Now, Darren...
We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what we've done
we
as an
provoked
excuse.
the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And, of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary-General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
A great advocate for Nigel Farage's politics. Do you not think that this is deeply out of line with standing up for Britain and standing up for the West's interests?
I don't at all, and frankly, I'm sick of seeing that clip played every hour on the hour.
So you think Putin invaded Russia because of what we and our allies did?
I think I would listen to what Nigel Farage actually said, because I watched the full interview, and he said he disliked President Putin, and President Putin had actually been responsible for causing the war itself. I don't see how any part of what he said was part of apologism.
Through actions of NATO.
Well, we did break our promises to Putin. We promised that all of these countries around him... Let me finish, please. All these countries around him wouldn't be allowed to join NATO. They did. We didn't allow Putin to join NATO. Perhaps we should have done and kept our enemies close. All Nigel said was that we provoked him. He clearly said it was Putin's fault. He clearly said he wasn't a supporter of Putin. This is being used as a tool against Farage because everyone's scared of him.
He's doing so well that, and people like you are so terrified by Nigel actually doing so well, and he's taken a lot of Labour votes in the Red Wall, and you people are trying to smear his name and call him an apologist for foreign regimes who wish us harm. That is absolute nonsense, and I think, frankly, you should be ashamed of yourself for pushing this really horrible narrative.
The principle you have. Just because you're a fanboy of Nigel Farage, you will excuse any nonsense that he says. There is nothing
What
patriotic.
did he say? That's nonsense.
There is nothing British, pro-British, about accepting that we somehow provoked him. Putin is a megalomaniac who will invade every country around him given the chance.
Again,
you should not make any grey area. It is not NATO defending the countries that it defends that has provoked him. He always wanted to do that, and if we didn't have NATO,
Nigel Farage, if you'd actually watched the interview, Benjamin, Nigel said this has given Vladimir Putin and the Russian hierarchy an excuse to turn to the Russian people and say, well, we needed to do this because of NATO's expansion.
Darren, we have to be honest here, which is that Putin simply did not need an excuse in order to invade Ukraine. And we saw actually this quite fascinatingly when Tucker Carlson went and interviewed Putin and he set him up. He asked him this question. He said, why did you do this? Why did you invade? And he was expecting him to give the answer, as Farage gave, it's all about NATO. That's actually not what Putin said. Putin gave a warped view of history in which Ukraine does not exist. It literally, there is no Ukrainian people, and therefore it's part of Russia, and therefore Russia can invade. Now, completely factually incorrect, of course. There is a Ukrainian nation. The Ukrainian people deserve their right to self-determination. They deserve to be able to choose their own future. And to suggest anything otherwise, to suggest that their simple fact of showing interest in being part of NATO and being part of the West was enough to justify Putin's action is just completely wrong.
Well, he didn't say that. He said Russia used it as an excuse to justify it. But Ben Leo, do you think actually that we should be more realistic here in the West, and we should accept that there needs to be some form of peace treaty, because this has gone on for over 2 years. We've spent vast sums of the West's taxpayer sums and military resources, and actually people like Benjamin, dare I say, are being a bit naive on how long this can actually go on for.
Yeah, I think we just need to grow up a bit and learn some nuance in the conversation. It's possible for one thing to exist at the same time as another. Putin can be a horrible tyrant, despot, dictator, and he can also, Nigel can give the assessment that he has a perception that NATO was expanding too close to their borders.
So you do think we provoked him?
Did I say that?
Well, I'm trying to work out what you're just saying.
No, do you know what? I don't know enough about the situation to give comment. So,
and Darren appears to have said that we should not be loyal to Ukraine and defend it in case it goes on for years.
We're not
let me ask you a question.
We're spending billions of pounds as the US is spending tens of billions of dollars.
Yes, but I don't want British people to be dragged into such a thing.
You appear to have just said that because it may go on for many years yet, that should affect whether we want to support them.
No, I'm saying that there needs to be... I think actually Ukraine have been far too digging their heels in and saying we refuse to actually talk to the Russian state about what kind of peace settlement could be negotiated.
Now it's all unravelling. So you think, presumably, that they should give some land over?
I don't know. I don't know what...
Do you know what?
Believe it or not, I haven't got Putin's WhatsApp.
That people like you, who claim to have a monopoly on patriotism and Western values, actually think that a despot like Putin can invade a neighbouring country and then you should sit down and hand some land over. There is nothing defending the West about that attitude.
Exactly. How many people do you want to die?
There is no way this war is going to end without a negotiation that involves some land. We might not like it, we might not think it's the right thing, and we might not think a despot should be able to go in and do that.
So
let's
say this war does end in negotiation, and most wars do. Total victory is very difficult. That is a justification for giving as much resource as possible to Ukraine to put them in the best possible position, so that if there is, we do get to that point that we're
hang on, Matthew. Would you have said that about the Vietnam War? Would you have said it should have gone on for as long as it did?
It's not that old.
I mean, it's not a comparable situation.
I think it is, because there were vast sums of money and actually troops being poured into that, and it was a losing battle all along.
Part of the issue with this war from the start has been the fact that Biden was very slow to approve the necessary weapons to give Ukraine a fighting chance against Russia. Eventually he did it, but by the time they got the weapons, they couldn't push back on the fronts. And this kind of unwillingness to go full throttle in support of Ukraine has now left them in a much weaker position, and unfortunately something close to a stalemate. And that is a failure of the West, and it sends a signal to China that we're not there with.
We can't undo the past. We can't undo the past. So where does it go now?
OK, we'll have to leave that one there.
Can I just say?
No, you can't.
We'd rather you didn't.
All right, go for it.
Right. Still ahead, though.